In the next decade, the automotive industry will change more than it has in the last 100 years. You don't have to look for evidence of that any farther than looking at the new non-automotive players that are entering the field. In fact, the automotive industry has become as much about coding as it has engineering as we proceed forward. When I was a visiting scientist at the MIT Media Lab, I became infatuated by studying how ideas are introduced and diffused across organizations. So I spent the last 8 years as part of a research team interviewing over 400 people trying to understand exactly what it is that causes some ideas to become bold and innovative in organizations and equally fit ideas, seemingly equally fit ideas, to not garner the attention and momentum necessary to manifest into innovation. Using sensor technologies and organizational network analysis, I came to a conclusion. Innovation isn't, in fact, just about technology. The reality is innovation may be as much about social dynamics and as much of a social phenomena as it is a technical one. Every organization has formal infrastructures, formal processes, formal strategies, formal policies that are necessary to run an organization. No new aha finding there, correct? Also, every organization has an entrepreneurial system, a local system, a system in which ideas originate. You see, the people in this room, mostly the ones in the entrepreneurial system, hate this stuff in the upper right-hand corner. If only that stuff would go away, if only you didn't have to deal with the operational minutia within complex organizations, then we could be bold and provocative, right? Unfortunately, I call this the innovator's hypocrisy. You need, inside corporations, this operational system, these operational structures in order to be successful. Without it, you can't scale. So there's a third thing that we found inside organizations that were successful, and it was something that we call adaptive space. And that's what I want to spend some time talking to you about. How is it that organizations that were successful had this adaptive space, and organizations that weren't were focused only in the local environment? The best story I can give you is one organization, a centralized innovation group who was doing some interesting work, some very exciting work, could not get it introduced into the complex system in order to get those innovations adopted. Fact is, over a 3-year horizon, they had a success rate of 0. So like every good leader, the leader of that group decided we must disband this group. We must disperse them across the organization. They were a very talented group, so it was easy to move them to other parts in the organization. And then something amazing happened. Within the next year, 3 bold innovations that the same team was working on diffused themselves across the organization. And in fact, 3 different innovations were introduced into the marketplace, all because of this team. Why? Because now they were diffused across the organization, influencing at different points across a complex system. How does that work? This is what we discovered. Ideas, in fact, do originate in the local environment. What do you do when you get an idea? You share it with your few friends, your few trusted advisors. You share it locally. You iterate on it, and you challenge one another locally. But nothing bold really happens inside this local system because it's a closed system. It's a closed cluster where everybody thinks and acts alike. Now, you can share the idea, but the reality is it's not until you get out of that system and start to connect it up with more ideas, bolder ideas, that something really phenomenal starts to happen. And that's exactly what we discovered here. It's this process of linking up, connecting idea to idea, cluster to cluster, that causes breakthrough, bold innovations across enterprises. Not only that, but it's at these intersections that new ideas emerge, that ideas that weren't even thought of before emerge as a result of these clusters, these individuals, these ideas clashing with each other and coming up with new insights. Eventually, however, like every one of us who's tried to innovate inside corporations, we hit a clash. We hit disruptions. We hit conflict, tension. And then the core question is, what do you do about that? Many people go back to the local and complain and commiserate with one another, but the bold innovators figure out how to work around that, how to go find a sponsor, how to close the network in on that sponsor and get that sponsor to actually start to sell those ideas into the formal system so we can scale. So what? Why is that important to us? Well, at General Motors, we're thinking about bold innovations to compete in this changing landscape. Things like connected vehicle, urban mobility, and autonomous vehicles. Taking these insights from thinking about innovation as a social phenomena and applying them to these big, bold bets is exactly why we're here in Israel. It's exactly why our Advanced Technical Center resides here in a vibrant ecosystem where they can connect across different entities, different clusters, in order to come out and think more boldly about what innovation could look like. How does that work? It starts with an idea, as I shared before. It starts with a simple idea. I want to create a self-driving vehicle. Quickly, you start to tap into your local network and understand, who do I know that's already doing something like this? Who do I know that can help me? You know, how do I connect up with those who would already get this? But soon you've got to move beyond that local environment. You've got to spread it. You've got to start to think about new concepts. You need to think about smart infrastructures and new radar systems in order to have a self-driving autonomous vehicle. But then you've got to experiment. And you've got to find places to start that inside of an organization. You've got to think about connectivity differently. Thinking about the social construct underneath these innovations, and that's exactly what will happen. Hidden beneath the wonderful technology, hidden beneath all these breakthroughs is the web of people who connect together in order to influence one another at every stage in this process. So how do you do that? Well, in the future, we'll be able to use sensor technologies in a much more prevalent way than what we can today. In experiments, we can do this today. We can understand the social network. We can understand who's influencing who through sociometric badges, through smart watches, through Google Glasses, and see when insights pop inside the system, inside the network. We'll be able to, and can already do it in experimental mode, understand when ideas are popping, where energy is flowing across the network, exactly where it is that these ideas are coming, when conflict emerges, and we'll continue to be able to create a landscape that encourages the environment where, in fact, corporate innovation can become successful as well. And that's exactly what we're doing at General Motors. We're creating an environment that's not focused on killing all the infrastructure that's actually necessary to scale innovation in the operating system, or even enhancing the entrepreneur's skills and building up the capability to innovate. What we're focused on is this space in between. This space in between that we call the adaptive space. And through an event and a series of activities called GM 2020, we're starting with this concept of think big, think bold, start small, do things today, iterate on those, connect the network, and we're doing things like GM 2020 orthodoxies. How can you actually give people permission to tear down the old mindsets, to break out of the conventions that limit your thinking? How can you actually engage people to unleash the hidden potential that exists inside every single organization? How do we actually provide platforms for people to talk about their bold ideas? And we do things in 3-minute segments. People pitch their idea in front of an auditorium, and anyone's welcome. Anyone's welcome. Anyone can present, and we share those and broadcast those so that they can become contagious across the organization. And we do things like hackathons, which we call collabs, and we apply them against everything, not just coding. And we look at things like, how do you create new accessory systems in a truck? Or how do you create new facility space? And we give people 24 hours to tear it apart and rebuild it and prototype it in such a way that at the end of 24 hours, they've got something new, something provocative, something that can be shared with the organization. So my challenge to you is, if in fact 90% of innovation fails inside of corporations, how is it that you can challenge your organization to think differently about innovation, to think about it as a social challenge, and to think about how, in fact, you can create adaptive space inside your own organizations to unleash the wealth of hidden potential that exists? Thank you.